What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering. I can't believe I missed this story, but I was, in my defense, traveling at the time. This is a pretty big story about the Blackhawk crash in DC, and we now have the black box decoded, and there are several inconsistencies, including the fact that the helicopter did not allegedly receive several transmissions from air traffic control. There are some altimeter discrepancies. There are all sorts of issues all around here. I hope that you're enjoying your time today. I will be climbing a volcano later today. So if this is my last video, again, it's always the wife that did it. Blackhawk helicopter's altimeter may have been inaccurate. Pilots may have also missed controls calls from the control tower. This is a cascade of failures. For those of you that don't remember, yes, the helicopter was flying too high, hundreds of feet, more than double the height it was supposed to be at the time of the crash. The plane was where it was supposed to be. Those 70 souls on that plane were lost because of the Blackhawk helicopter. It was not a combination of things. A preliminary analysis of the flight data and voice recorder on board of the Blackhawk helicopter leading up to the collision with the commercial flight over DC back on January 29th has now indicated the helicopter's altimeter may have been inaccurate and that the pilots did not hear calls from Reagan National Airport Control Tower. Obviously, two pretty crucial pieces of information. By the way, wherever you're watching this, please leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're on YouTube, or follow if you're on Rumble. Really enjoy doing this job. I enjoy it so much. I'm doing it on vacation. Well, that is so I can pay my staff. But really appreciate you guys. The radio altimeter on board of the Blackhawk at the time of the deadly midair collision read 278 feet. Homedy said, the altimeter uses a radio beam to show the helicopter's altitude over the ground, but it may not have been what the pilots of the helicopter were referencing at the time of the crash. Newly revealed data suggests that the Army helicopter crew may not have realized that they were actually flying higher than they were supposed to be when they collided with the aircraft. Here. What we don't want to do is to release radio altitude data so that people blame the Blackhawk crew, Homedy told CNN. Wait, what we don't want to do is release radio altitude data so people blame the crew. We need to know what they were seeing. And we can't know right now with the data we have, but we'll get it. But I have more. Hold on. Homedy said, cautioned information in a preliminary, and that there were inconsistencies in the data. It might not have been what the Blackhawk crew was seeing. He told CNN Friday, they're still trying to cover all this up. They're trying to cover it up. Homedy said the agency is trying to verify all components of the helicopter. We are seeing conflicting information in the data, which is why we aren't releasing altitude for the Blackhawk's entire route. Well, I have it for you, thanks to the hard work of another YouTuber that I'm going to share with you. Determining the Blackhawk's precise altitude at the time of the collision is seen as a crucial step in understanding how the two aircraft collided. Well, it's very easy to tell where it was because it was occupying the same space as the airplane. That's pretty obvious, right? The last radio altitude recorded for the regional jet was 313 feet, 2 seconds before the collision. Now, one can presume it did descend a little bit more than that. 1 second before impact, the regional jet began to increase its pitch or up and down movement of the plane's nose, reaching about 9 degrees at the time of the collision. Homedy said, explaining the pilots of a regional jet saw something was about to happen before the collision, but there was no indication, however, that the Blackhawk crew saw the possibility of a collision unfolding in front of them. Now, here's what's interesting. After comparing voice recordings from the control tower and the Blackhawk, investigators believe the helicopter pilots did not hear the instructions from the tower. In particular, 17 seconds before the collision, the tower told the helicopter to pass behind the commuter jet, but the audio from the helicopter's voice recorder, the instruction was not heard. possibly because the pilots had keyed their microphones to reach the tower at the same time. So maybe they opened their they had reached out, and you can't really talk over each other on the radio. But they're just speculating that. Additionally, the audio also indicates that the Blackhawk crew may not have received an earlier transmission that the regional jet was circling the runway. So they didn't hear from ATC. There's some cover-up going on here. This may not have been, this may not have been the pilot's faults. It really might not. The cockpit voice recorder of American Airlines regional jet has sustained water intrusion. The NTSB previously reported was recovered on January 30th and soaked overnight in ionized water, then put in a vacuum to extract moisture. The plane's data flight recorder was found in good condition. The NTSB also believes that the helicopter crew was likely wearing night vision goggles while performing a check ride or a practical exam. This is something pilots have to do every year or two, even private pilots, to stay quote-unquote current. The Army does 3 types of checks or check rides: instrument, which is like IFR, annual, and night vision. The ride was combined annual and night vision check ride. The night vision goggles could have further complicated the situation, requiring the crew to constantly be scanning left and right for peripheral vision. But that's what they're supposed to do, right? That's what they're supposed to do. Now, I want to give a huge shout out to, and a subscription to, Brian Murray, who decoded a section of this black box that I want to show. I think you should watch his whole video about it, but I'm going to show a small section of it here, which really seems to explain what we hear on the black box recorder.
Vision reduces from 180 degrees down to 40. That makes it very difficult to see anything you're not looking directly at.
He's talking about night vision.
In this part of the flight, the helicopter is following Route 1 and Route 4 of the helicopter routes. The NTSB notes that while these are depicted on the charts, there's no defined boundaries. However, pilots are expected to stay under the maximum height limits.
The maximum height limit there, if I remember correctly, is 200 feet.
Location of the collision, the helicopter should have been at 200 feet or below, but as we'll see later, there may have been other factors at play. The first interesting anomaly that happened on the Blackhawk's cockpit voice recorder happened at 8:43 and 48 seconds. That's approximately 4 minutes before the crash. The pilot flying said they were at 300 feet, but their instructor said they were at 400. This could indicate that they're...
Sorry, I had a little visitor there. Let's go back. This is the key part of the video I wanted to show you.
400. This could indicate that their altimeters were not set correctly or weren't approximately 4 minutes before the crash. The pilot flying said they were at 300 feet, but their instructor said they were at 400. This could indicate that their altimeters were not set correctly or weren't synchronized between the left and right seat. Pilots primarily fly by using...
Now, I do want to point out, okay, 300, still 100 feet too high. Anyway, it's 100 feet doesn't matter, maybe 20,000 feet. But 100 feet matters. It was the difference between life and death that day. So one pilot said, hey, I'm 100 feet too high. The other pilot said, I'm 200 feet too high. And they didn't adjust it.
Using their barometric altitude. This works by measuring the air pressure around the aircraft to determine the plane's altitude. But in the real world, the barometric pressure can change. So pilots use an adjustment on their altimeter to correct for that. But if the pilot and the instructor had adjusted their altimeters incorrectly, they might have believed that they were at different altitudes than they were, or might have had a different view between the left and the right seat. The
other thing, though, is weird is that, again, both are way too high, right? So why didn't they adjust? Even if they thought they were at 300, they were really at 400. If they had dropped 100 feet, they probably missed that plane. Maybe the helicopter goes down, but not the plane.
NTSB noted that there was never a discussion of these altitude discrepancies. They also noted that they weren't releasing granular altitude data at this time, as they found other discrepancies in the recordings. However, they did note that the Blackhawk's radio altimeter did provide an accurate source of data. Another thing the NTSB couldn't do was cross-reference that data with GPS information, as the GPS information was not recorded on the flight data recorder. About 2 minutes later, the instructor noted that they were flying at about 300 feet. The pilot flying acknowledged, saying they would descend down to 200. The next interesting fact that comes from the Blackhawk's cockpit voice recorder happens at 8:46:01.
Just quick reminder, check out Brian Murray here on YouTube. He's at almost 100,000 subscribers.
Just under 2 minutes before the accident. At that moment, air traffic control calls out that the traffic is a CRJ circling to runway 33.
Here we go.
Traffic just off the workspace CRJ at 1,000 feet, start runway 3.
But the Blackhawk's cockpit voice recorder does not hear the term circling. That means that even though the Blackhawk knew there was a CRJ, they did not know its location. But the most damning evidence from the Blackhawk's cockpit voice recorder happened 7 seconds before the accident at 8:47 and 40.
Now, how much could they have adjusted in 7 seconds? The plane, probably not so much, but the Blackhawk could have dove almost certainly and made up that distance.
42 seconds. At that time, the air traffic controller called the Blackhawk, asking them to pass behind the CRJ. But the Blackhawk pilots keyed their mic before the transmission was done, blanking out the portion that said pass behind. Once again, they missed that crucial location information. Aircraft, including the CRJ and Blackhawk in this accident, use VHF transmissions to communicate between other aircraft and the ground. These radios use amplitude modulation. That's the same modulation used in AM radios in your car. This is the benefit of working over very long distances, but at the expense of clarity and readability. This also has the downside that only one person can be transmitting on the same frequency at any given time. Modern digital radios, like those found in many police forces, offer a very similar range but with dramatically increased clarity. Many also allow multiple stations to be transmitting at the same time. But we don't use those in aviation for fear of breaking backwards compatibility. The instructor then replied to the air traffic control saying that the traffic was in sight and requested visual separation.
Aircraft in sight, press visual separation.
Off of the radio, the instructor relayed to the pilot flying that they believed ATC was asking them to move left towards the banks of the river. At the time of the accident, the Blackhawk's radio altimeter read 278 feet. However,
again, still almost 100 feet too high. They're supposed to be under 200 feet.
As we noted earlier, this might not have been what the pilots saw on the altimeter in front of them. At the impact, the Blackhawk was flying nearly completely level, with only 0.5 degrees nose-up pitch and a left roll of 1.6 degrees. From the data recovered, the NTSB notes that there was no electronic warnings in the Blackhawk of the CRJ that was approaching. They also noted that the Blackhawk was not transmitting ADSB information, and they were investigating for the cause.
So the ADSB information allows other planes to see it. This story is bubbling up. Huge shout out to Brian Murray for all the visual work that he did here to make it a lot easier to understand the video, understand the crash. Make sure you leave a like on this video, you check out Brian's channel, and you subscribe or follow so I can keep you up to date, because I'm going to keep following this story. Absolutely. Talk to you again real soon.